Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to part 3 of the Superman Marathon. Today we're going to be obviously talking about Superman 3, released in 1983, and I actually, surprisingly, only just watched this film recently, and it's better than I thought it was. Um, Certainly not as good as the first two. I still kind of consider it as the worst out of the Christopher Reeve series because it's not really a Superman movie. Um, but it's a lot better than I thought it was when I was younger. Because I thought this was like, oh, this was like the worst one of them all. This is like the most trash. This is like absolute garbage. But now I am. But I knew there were some good scenes in it. But now I'd appreciate it more for what it is than what it could have been. So anyways, um, so this was made on a budget of slightly lower than the other two at $39 million. At the domestic box office, it made over 59 million, and worldwide it made 80 million. So this was still successful, but it's certainly made less money than the first two. This one was directed solely by Richard Lester. If you guys may remember from Superman 2, he took over the job of directing from Richard Donner after he was fired. Um, but this one he has sole directing duty. He was the only one that was directing this, and it clearly shows. Um, like Superman 2, there were um some hints of comedy in it. This one is basically a comedy Superman movie, and it honestly, it's pretty good. Not obviously as good as the first two. Um, it was released on June 17th of 1983. Which actually I believe I forgot to mention in the first part of the Superman 2 review. That was released on June 19th of 1981 in America, while in like Europe and like Asia it was released on December 4th, 1980. So the plot about this film is computer programmer Gus Gorman, played by Richard Pryor, is hired by financial tycoon Webster, played by Robert Vaughn, to seize control of a wealthy satellite and annihilate Columbia's coffee crop. When Superman, played by Christopher Reeve again, manages to thwart the plan, Webster commands Gorman to use the satellite to locate kryptonite, the Man of Steel's mortal weakness. But a missing unknown element in the kryptonite, uh, Gus, replaced by Gus with tar, causes an untainable, um, un, well, a angry side, um, it's a side effect to the of the kryptonite that makes Superman go evil. Um, Now again, most of the main cast is back from the previous two. But really quickly, I want to talk about Margot Kidder. She only really appears at the beginning and the end of this film because she was not happy about um, that Richard Donner was fired, and so what the Salkinds decided to do was reduce her role for this film. Um, and um, I'm surprised that Jimmy Olsen actually gets a slightly bigger role than Lois in this film because he takes part in the chemical plant explosion scene with Clark Kent as they are trying to travel to Smallville. Um, but now let's talk about the new cast. So the main one is Richard Pryor as Gus Gorman. Now, I feel like um does good for this film, but I just feel like his because he was obviously hired for because of his comedy. Um, I just don't think that his comedy was used to a to a good level in this film. It seems very watered down in this film, which I think really suffers really taints the film. And I just think that Richard Pryor is really like not used in the film at all. Robert Vaughn as Ross Webster. Now he's the main villain of the film. Lex Luthor is completely gone from the film, and um, he's replaced by Ross Webster, which is, like I just said, he's just a tycoon man. He just wants all the coffee and eventually all the oil in America, which I think, again, it's not really a Superman thing. Like if that is a Superman thing, it doesn't really, like, he would. It's like one of those things where you could just stop like that. But no, we have to take a basically 2-hour film to, you know, stop this plan, and it's kind of. I just don't get it. Like, this isn't really a Superman film. This seems like a generic action film. Um, like Superman 1 and 2. Well, I mean, 1 had Lex Luthor, and 2 had General Zod, two villains from the actual comics. And then 4 actually had, even though that villain was made up for the film, at least it was somewhat plausible in the Superman mythos. This one is just coffee and oil. This guy just wants all the coffee, or he wants to make all the money off of coffee and oil, and that's it. Um, Annie Annie Ross plays Vera, and that's Ross's sister, who is, I believe, um, well, obviously Ross Webster is the chairman of, or the CEO of his company, and then I guess Vera is kind of like his right hand man, woman, I should say, because like she's kind of like also like if like Ross is like out doing something, she's like in control. She takes part in the most horrifying scene in the film, which I will be talking about later. Um, Pamela Stevenson plays Laura. Um, Basically Ross's like kind of girlfriend in the film. She basically makes Superman, like the evil Superman, um, go and do some bad things. Um, I believe no, because there's an oil tanker going in the wrong direction, and so she basically orders Superman to go and stop it and get all the oil out in the sea. Um, and she was okay. I just felt like her voice was a little too high pitched. Um, for her character, because it's just like it's very kind of high pitched and it's kind of annoying. Annette O'Toole as Lana Lang. She's probably the only actual great cast member that was introduced in the film. She plays Lana Lang. Now, if you guys are a fan of the channel, you guys might remember Annette O'Toole from the 1990 miniseries of It. She plays the older version of Beverly. Now, like in the miniseries It, she does fantastic in this film as Lana Lang. And as quote unquote Superman's a love interest in the film, since Lois Lane isn't um in this film, and she pulls it off really well. Like all the chemistry between her and Clark are very good, and I just think that she really did very good on this film. Um, um, so really quickly, I want to talk about before we get on to the fun facts and my favorite scenes, which I believe is a new segment I'm adding to the reviews. Let's talk about the DVD. Now I just believe that this is the part of the box set that came out in 2006 because it has the Superman logo and it says Deluxe Edition, which means that's just a one disc edition. So there's the front, there's the spine, there's the back. So there's the disc. And so So the special features are commentary by executive producer Elias Solkine and producer Pierce Spangler, vintage TV documentary The Making of Superman 3, additional scenes, and theatrical trailers. So this is a another kind of bare bones release, but unlike Superman like 1 and 2, which got like Superman 1 got a 4 disc edition and Superman 2 got a 2 disc edition, 3 and 4 only got 1 disc editions on Blu-ray, on DVD. And like Superman 2, this film is only available on Blu-ray in the United States as a part of the box set that came out in, I believe, 2000 and I forgot when, but it was like around the time, I believe, when Man of Steel came out, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. But yeah, that's like the only way you can get it on Blu-ray in the United States. Um, okay, so fun fact. This film almost had Supergirl, Brainiac, and Mr. Mxyzptlk, or however the hell you say it. So yeah, this was almost a Superman and Supergirl film. Um, so basically, the original plot for this film was basically Brainiac was to have taken Supergirl from Krypton before it exploded, and raised her as as his own. And then I believe she escapes to go to Earth and meet Superman, and they're having Brainiac and Supergirl already had an affair, which was really weird since it was she was Brainiac was kind of a father figure to her, and now she's having a relationship with Superman, and now because Superman and Supergirl were known as cousins, so yeah. Uh, and then Brainiac, I believe, would get jealous, and then started going after Superman, trying to kill him. Typical Superman villain stuff. And I forgot where Mrs. Pitlick would be would be fitted in the plot, but I believe it was meant to be in, I would say, like the second or third act. And apparently the finale was Brainiac was supposed to transport both himself and Superman to a medieval castle where they were supposed to have a sword fight to the death. And that was a little that's a little weird, even for a Superman film. So really quickly, I want to talk about the favorite scenes from the first two films because I don't believe I did that. I know I didn't do that for the first film. I don't believe I did. I did it for the second film. So my favorite scene from Superman the movie is when, for me, honestly, it's the confrontation between Superman and Lex in Lex's height, like in his place, like underneath the train station. When the line that basically is a warp brain like you gets kicked out of playing to death by innocent people, and Lex responds with no, by causing the death of innocent people, and that whole confrontation I believe is fantastic. My favorite scene for Superman 2, I'm gonna have to be completely honest, is the whole final battle, not at the Fortress of Solitude, but in Metropolis. In the original theatrical cut, that whole battle is fantastic. That's my favorite scene out of the whole film. And um, if I honestly had to pick a second favorite scene for the Richard Donner cut, or my favorite scene from the Richard Donner cut is when Superman and Jor-El are talking about getting rid of Superman's powers, because I think that was a very good scene, and um, it really kind of it was that interaction, and then after Superman gets beaten up at the bar or at the diner in the Richard Donner cut, and he's trying to talk to Jor-El, and Jor-El finally kind of goes away by merging with Superman to get his powers back, is fantastic. Really quickly, gotta go back to the 3 hour version of Superman the movie. My favorite scene from that is when Superman attempts to stop the rocket, and it darts past him, leaving him puzzled, and he chases after it. That is a fantastic visual effects shot, and it's great. My favorite scene from Superman 3 is, of course, the Clark Kent versus evil Superman battle in the junkyard. It was probably the most, like, if anyone if any people are talking about Superman 3, the first thing that anyone will mention is the junkyard fight, because it's probably the best thing out of the whole film, besides Christopher Reeve's acting, which is fantastic. Um, yeah, that whole battle was fantastic, and the way that they pulled it off without using too much visual trickery, which is great. I think there's only one or two shots when both Christopher Reeves are in the same shot, and you could tell that the one is like each shot is like cut so that they could both fit in, and you could it's plainly obvious. Especially when Superman or evil Superman is killed, when Clark chokes him, you can clearly see there's like a cut between his the arm where it's Christopher Reeve and then a stunt actor holding Chris as evil Superman. It's pretty obvious, but that's the part I love about this film, or any of the old '80s Superman films. Um, so personally, I would rate this film a 7 out of 10. It's pretty good. You just need to be in the right mood for it, and it would be really funny and real fun. So, yeah, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that video, and see you guys for the review on Superman 4, which actually, hold up a second. Almost completely forgot to mention about the soundtrack really quickly. Again, I know I mentioned this about in the Superman 2 review, but like I said, I only mentioned the Superman 2 tracks. Um, so basically, the first two discs are basically entirely about Superman 2, and the third disc is all about Superman 3. Um, and I think it really sounds good. Honestly, compared to the original soundtrack release, it's honestly way better. So, yeah, guys, hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys in the review of Superman 4, which will be coming up right after this. Live long and prosper. Out.